Hey guys, thanks for coming out here. I think a few people are still trickling in, but kind of want to get started. I'm Dave. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Fictiv here. Just want to thank all you guys for coming out today. It's cool to see new faces, some familiar faces, and some old-time people in our community and whatnot. So really awesome to have a crowd here. This is the first big event we've thrown in our new space. We moved in here in May, so cool to see standing room only, and thanks for coming out again today. So Fictiv, if you guys don't know, we do 3D printing and rapid prototyping, and it's really cool to see a large community here. For us, our vision is really to democratize manufacturing. We really want people to get access to tools and knowledge, and this is a big part of it, the offline part in the community. So really excited to have some awesome panelists up here today to talk about design versus engineering specifically. I think one of the interesting things for us as a manufacturer that sits in the middle is that we really see this process of going from an idea or a digital form to a physical piece. And from that, we see a lot of trends. And one of those trends that we see a lot of is this tension that we talk about. This tension of design versus engineering, of feel versus function. And so I think today that I'd like to start it off with some quotes, because I think that's always helpful because they're more notable than myself. So Donald Norman, who some of you guys might know as the author of The Design of Everyday Things. If you haven't read it, you should definitely pick up this book and read it. This is a good quote to start us off here on the design side. It's not enough that we build products that function, that are understandable and usable. We also need to build products that bring joy and excitement, pleasure and fun, and yes, beauty to people's lives. So I'll let you guys think about that a little bit. It's a little deep quote for you. Yep, thank you. And I want to contrast this as well to maybe one of the most prolific engineers and entrepreneurs of our current era with Elon Musk. Christine actually found this quote in one of his interviews where he talks about, I don't spend my time pontificating about the high concept things. I spend my time solving engineering and manufacturing problems. That's pretty interesting from a guy that's built PayPal, that's built Tesla, one of arguably the most innovative cars that is both beautiful and very functional. So today, what I thought would be pretty fun for us to talk about is really to bring some of the most world's experts and some of the top product firms in the US to discuss this idea of this tension of design versus engineering here. So I want to thank you guys for coming first and foremost. And we'll pass the mic around a little bit so everyone can hear. So why don't you guys just introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what your company does, and then maybe talk quickly about your product development cycle and how you think about design as a philosophy.
Awesome, thanks. I'm representing Synapse. We're a product development consultancy. We sell engineering services, mechanical, electrical, firmware. We basically deliver connected devices that satisfy not only the engineering requirement of our clients' desires, but also pay attention to form in how that reflects our client's brand. And so I think a really valuable thing that we've been doing over the last 14 years is understanding that balance of engineering and design.
Yeah.
And I would like to maybe, if I gave a speech, I would say it was industrial design and mechanical engineering, because I mean, certainly there's a tension there, but I do feel that we have been able to, throughout the years, understand the balance and the importance of the form and get the function fitting in the form.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Cool, function and form, I like it.
Awesome.
Cool.
And my name is Darren Smedberg.
Darren from Synapse, cool.
Hello everyone, I'm Steve Myers. I founded Mindtribe Product Engineering back in '98. That was a few years ago now, before hardware was as hot as it is now. And we started out as strictly an engineering firm, and that is still indeed our focus. We're 30-something people, and we're all engineers. But we really noticed after maybe a decade or so doing what we do and designing products for other people that we spent a lot of our time making things that frankly didn't matter that much or weren't that great, never shipped. We wanted to find a way to make things that were more impactful in the world. And a big part of that is incorporating design. And so a big part of what we've been doing the last few years is developing products more holistically to try to make sure that we're doing impactful things, both in terms of things people care about and that successful businesses can build themselves around. We can get into that more a little bit.
Cool.
later.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve.
Hi everybody, I'm Dan Harden. I'm co-founder and CEO of Whipsaw, and we have an office in San Jose, and we're building an office up here as well.
Finally.
Yeah, finally. Mostly because of all of you guys. They love our company, they love our brand, but they're like, oh, but San Jose. San Jose, it's actually a great place to do business, but not necessarily to commute there. So, actually, the name Whipsaw is actually very pertinent to this discussion tonight. Some of you might know what a whipsaw is, a long two-man saw with a handle on each side. You cannot operate it by yourself. It's impossible. You can't do it. You need reciprocity. You need togetherness. You need lots of cooperation. This applies beautifully whether we are acting as ourselves, the consultant, or the end user, or our clients. It also works with one another in the organization. We have industrial designers and engineers. And yes, there's tension. Yes, there's reciprocity. I spend a good 5% of my day probably just trying to get these two groups to work together. And we can talk a lot about that dynamic. So we design all kinds of products: consumer electronics, telecommunications, networking, medical, scientific goods. A lot of products we design, you guys probably know. Go to our website, you can check them out. We've been at it for 16 years. Before that, I was president of Frog Design. Before that, I was in New York at Dreyfus. So I've been a consultant, a design consultant for, I know I don't look this old. That's my birthday. I've been doing this for 34 years. I absolutely freaking love what I do. I am the only industrial designer here. So I've got, my burden is the VS word here, so.
Love it.
Let's go for it, man.
Let's dig in.
This does kind of look like a World War II poster, by the way.
Well, we can thank Christine for it. It's some epic design as part of it. Got to have a little design. Got to have tension in the visual.
I love it.
As well. We'll pass the mic back so we can use it. I'll probably speak without it because I've always had a loud voice. Can you guys hear me okay? Cool. Awesome. So I think to dig in, really, I'd like to start us off on what this combination of design and engineering actually looks like, rather than versus. So I think I'd like to maybe start this off with you, Darren, and how you think about design and engineering. So I think I know the answer to this, but do you think that they're coupled, or do you think the two disciplines are actually decoupled when you're thinking about it in a product development process?
Well, it can take a lot of forms, but am I loud enough? Cool. Great. The way I think I've seen it work best is it has to be coupled.
Has to be coupled.
It has to be together. The earlier you can get the two parties together, the better. And let me give you a small example of something that happened at Synapse a few years ago.
Cool.
Somebody had been working on kind of a new technology. It was a wearable, and instead of coming to us with a mountain of technical specs of which processor to use, how many hours of battery life, what particular algorithm or communication protocol was going to, they just walked us through the day in the life of the product. And as it turned out, the product, we've shipped billions of them, or they have, but it's about half the size as what it would have been had they come to us with a mountain of technical specs. So in that, the engineers that I work with, that I get to work with every day, what they want to do is they want to see the vision of user experience. Mm-hmm. They want to see how the product wakes up, what it does all day, how it helps.
That's our
nice.
doorbell.
How it helps the person, how it helps the user, and then how it goes to bed. So they can get behind that story. Yeah. Because, eventually, as an engineer in product development, you have made a lot of things. Maybe if you're lucky, some or most of them have shipped. It's quite unlikely.
Quite unlikely.
But at the end of the day, you want to actually make something that has a little bit of a personality and has maybe a little bit, if you're lucky, some of your personality behind it. So in that example, it was awesome.
So you'd actually say that your engineers are also designers, that you believe that they're coupled together.
I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
We're
I'm just
very
pushing
technical.
you.
We are a very technical bunch.
So designers can't be technical.
I think there's definitely some crossover.
Okay.
But what I feel is that the engineering team can understand it better if there's some emotion behind it. They'll feel some connection behind it if they understand what it's supposed to do, and they'll figure out the technical bits.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we will definitely listen.
Yeah.
But as good consultants, I think we owe it back to our client to then recite back to them, okay, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is this really
What
how this thing is supposed to solve the problem?
Steve, do you think that's true for your engineers as well? In terms of like, do you think that they're coupled together in that same sense?
Yeah, so we think of successful products as being defined as the following: things people care about and things that drive successful business. And that's not because we think successful business is an end in and of itself, but that means that's a good measure of doing something that people care about in the world at scale as a successful business. You're delivering value to the world. If you think of products in those terms, there are no boundaries between design and engineering. Users don't really care what that boundary is, and businesses don't either. I think the reason we're even having this conversation is that those groups have traditionally been pretty compartmentalized and haven't had a universal language to really come together and, I guess, do their best work together.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things we've been working on the past few years, is finding a more kind of systematic way to do that, to try to incorporate.
So actually
more.
working to couple them more together, you'd say, of how you would couple that to solve that business goal almost.
Yeah, exactly. So we think of it from a holistic perspective of representing user voice, design voice, business, and engineering.
Cool.
And we have a tool that we use called a product nucleus that tries to capture in order of priority what the most important aspects of a product are.
Yep.
And that needs to be bought into by all those core voices, and it just provides sort of a playing field, if you will, for discussing those trade-offs and managing.
Cool. Let's save those 4 voices because I do want to dig into that later. Dan's itching over here. Please.
I'm going to disagree.
Okay. Good. I'll hold you guys back.
So I agree with the overall objective.
Yeah.
Holistic solutions, creating better experiences for the end user. However, designers are different than engineers.
How so?
How so? It's pretty clear to me. I've been running creative organizations for a long time. So designers are often coming at it from a very dreamy state, including myself. I'm an artist. I paint. I write music, and I'm informed by very different things. I'm inspired by different things than engineers.
Yeah.
I love when designers come up with fantastical ideas, things that make no sense at all. And as soon as the engineers come in, it's often the case, not every time, that these constraints all of a sudden start to put designers in boxes, and they can feel belittled about the direction that they're going in. I hate the word impossible or can't do. We just don't allow it in a process. Engineers are often a little bit more left brain, a little bit more analytical, a little more they want a little bit more time and schedule to work things out. I'm being a little bit contentious here on purpose.
No.
I'm going to come over there.
Yeah, these guys.
I got you, man.
The beauty does happen though when you at the right time put designers and engineers together. There's a time to couple, and there is a time to decouple.
Yeah.
And I love the energy that happens when the coupling happens, because the engineers are surprised and delighted by, wow, that's an interesting way of viewing the product. We wouldn't have gotten there through a more analytical approach. And designers are also delighted in the fact, like, wow, you really helped me figure this out.
So I think this is actually a perfect bridge. So why don't you just keep the mic, because I'll ask you that. So for myself, I come from an automotive background. So I come from Ford, and actually design and engineering doesn't actually win either. It's all around efficiency. It's all we do, right? In different automotive groups, if you take a Honda, the engineer is the heart of the ecosystem there. They're what beats specifically. And so for us, when we were designing it Ford, it was all around that classic cycle that we did EVT, engineering validation test, we did DVT, design, then we did PVT, product. And we went through this systematically, right? It's all efficiency over and over again. And so I think that this is a really interesting question that, it sounds like you believe in this coupling and decoupling, but do you guys follow a similar process to this EVT, DVT, PVT, or have you come up with your own system?
Eventually, yes.
Eventually, yes.
Verification and validation of any idea, especially nowadays.
Yep.
The sooner you can get to it, the better. But there's a time for it.
Got it.
And of course, you have to do DVT, EVT, et cetera, make
Yep.
lots of prototypes.
Yep.
Absolutely, there's real truth in there, and it's
Yep.
truth to bear when you actually produce these prototypes and tests that can tell you the answers.
So at what point do you think it makes sense to decouple them? It sounds like in the beginning you want to have a space where designers can go, invent the unimaginable, right? And you want to decouple it. I think the first part of any project, I find that industrial designers are often the ones holding the staff. Yeah.
And you might look at it as kind of like inverted wedges, if you will, where there's a lot of design activity and then it slowly tapers off over the project history and then the engineering ramps up a little bit more. It's always concurrent. I believe in concurrent development whenever you can do it, including the software folks, the business team, get your CEO, anybody at the C table should be involved. So
I think that's great. I'd pass it on to Steve if you want, because I think, Steve, you talked a lot about that product nucleus and that process you have. I think it's something that's pretty unique that comes from my background too at Stanford and the D School and a lot of that we've had a lot of great conversations there. Do you follow a similar approach to say what Dan does, you think?
Yeah, I think so. Dan made the point of trying to get there as soon as possible, which we also definitely try to do. It's sort of a minimum viable product style of thinking of not trying to build the perfect thing for everyone the first time. So we try to get there as fast as possible just to try to validate that what we're building is good, both design and engineering wise, but really those stages themselves are, for us, are very traditional in terms of the function of them for us is making something really good at scale.
Yeah.
It's not so much about validating the basic aspects of design and engineering, it's more about building something really good at scale. So they do look traditional for us.
But if you're trying to do it at the same time, right, we hear concurrency is one theme. We're talking about getting to that MVP as soon as possible. But we're trying to touch on these business goals. That's a really challenging problem, right? If I want to make a connected, toaster or whatever, right? Like, yeah, I can go take a pie and buy a toaster at Walmart and I can have my MVP in like 3 seconds, right? That could be, I could have a 10, maybe a 2-hour hack and all of a sudden I've solved my business goal. I can wake up in the morning and have a toasted fresh bagel with my, chive cream cheese on top, and it tastes great, But does that get you through your process? Does that allow design to be creating the impossible enough? How does that process work in actuality, I guess?
And to try to incorporate all the different things you need to be successful.
Yeah.
Well, I think that once from our perspective, if we're talking about manufacturing EVT, so forth, cost of change tends to be pretty high at that point. If you need to make running changes, you've invested in tooling, you're doing it at scale, you've done production builds, you've bought components. So we try to de-risk everything we can before that point as fast as possible. So with your toaster example, if I'm picking up on that, that would be a great way to validate maybe something that you want to learn about, what you think the product should be, or something about the design or whatever. Do that really as fast and as soon as you can.
Yep.
Then you get to manufacture, that won't bite you.
Cool. How about Dan? I mean, you guys are hardcore on the tech specs and the engineering side. So I come to you with my toaster project. How do you think about that product cycle for developing that thing? Do you agree with these guys?
Absolutely. I think some unique thing about Synapse and why I'm still there that it just thrills me to go into work every day is we work with people with almost no money, right? The startup that has a great idea that is actually going to make someone's life better, and we can see a path toward success, and it really excites our team, right? Mm-hmm. And then we work with the largest multi-billion national corporations, and they need a problem solved as well. And so sometimes the rigorous process of, alpha, POC, EV, DV, PV, sometimes that works, and sometimes that's great and it's well understood. Sometimes you have to break the rules. The soonest you can get a POC to market, the best.
Right.
The better we understand the technical requirements, the better. The first time we can get some silicon on a board and get our software team coding on something that's gonna be the MP solution, the better. What I think is really interesting and what we keep seeing, especially with kind of maybe middle tier clients is that, yeah, we are really good at designing products that survive drop, shock, water ingress, RF, what have you, right? But that's just the technical side of it. That's the nuts and bolts. That's the engineering stuff. What about the human side of it? The sooner we can get to something that is a field trial where we get to learn about how wrong we were about our assumptions in the beginning that establish those design pillars, which we can come back to later because I think I read ahead with the questions. Like the sooner we can get to that stuff, the better. So we like rushing towards something that's pretty viable, that's a lot like what we think MP is going to be, but get it out into people's hands and see what works and what doesn't. And maybe it's not exactly form factor, but it's very indicative of the form we were given. It's very brand strong, unless we have to obfuscate it, in which case it's just a box.
It's just a box.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I don't mean to be kind of both ways on the answer, but it really depends on our client and what their goals are. But it's super interesting to have that breadth.
And I think what's interesting is we have a pretty diverse audience here, and for everyone that's watching as well, that is there an audience that you try to tailor that towards? I mean, from a startup all the way up to, a mid-tier client that's launching their second product to, if you're working with a Google X or an Apple or something, do you tailor a process to one or the other? You'd say
100%.
It's totally, it's off the cuff.
No, it's like, I use a silly analogy, but when I was in early years of calculus, what I would try to do was figure out what my professor wanted and how they wanted it, and then I would give it to them like they wanted it. Because sometimes they wanted you to show all the work, sometimes they wanted you to make one sheet per answer, sometimes I'd fit it in one line on the graph paper, which was my specialty of writing small, but is whatever they could take, whatever they wanted, that's what I would deliver, because at the end of the day, that was efficiency.
Totally.
So it's really, really relevant to determine what serves them best. And we tell them and we agree. Because sometimes all we're doing is getting a product to market might be like 20 or 100, to get them to their next round of funding. Because they're just a couple of people. It's a couple of people that have a checking account. Yeah. It's tough when it's your own money.
I know. I know very well. I wouldn't be sitting up here as well, and I think I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by an amazing community that's helped me continue to explore that passion. I think I can relate a lot to you. This is the last quote I promise that I'll give you guys, but this is a quote that has followed me a long ways. It's from James Dyson, obviously the founder of Dyson, who's an incredible inventor, and he's done. So bear with me on this one. A good scientist is a person with original ideas, whereas a good engineer is a person who makes a design that works with as few original ideas as possible. There's no prima donnas in engineering, and I think that to what you're talking about on what your professor wants, whether it's a small line graph paper or he wants a full, typed out explicit answer, that as engineers we have to work with the tools that we have. So, I think that one of the things that we see, and another trend that I would share with the audience that we have here, is we see this idea that people aren't actually solving problems anymore. That a big trend that we see is that people come to us and they are spending more and more time making a beautiful product rather than actually solving the user's needs. I get more examples from young companies and startups, the guys that are on their own budgets that are like, here's my model, I'm making this thing, I need an Apple-like finish on it. I need this beautiful thing on here that looks just like an Apple product. And unfortunately for them, they don't know how big of an organization it takes to make the things that are in the majority of our pockets right now, right? To make this really beautiful product. So in no particular order, you guys can grab it. The next question I would ask, which I think that this lends to, is, does a product always need to be beautiful? Is design intrinsically to the guy? We know where that was going. I have actually Dan written down here. The question I'd ask you, Dan, is the ID on the panel is the designer here is does a design intrinsically connected to that solution, right?
Yeah, you're right.
You do it.
I understand.
Yep.
Generally, I think the answer is yes.
Okay.
Why shouldn't it be?
No,
It-
my
it-
answer,
you know,
my
it-
answer is yes.
Oh, interesting.
No, I mean, it costs the same to tool an ugly product as it does a beautiful one.
That's not
Honestly.
necessarily true.
Yeah,
Almost
yes,
true.
I can prove that.
Okay.
I think it's very important, however, to always provide, especially as a consultant, as any of you, content is king. Content is king. Never forget that. Just, there is a tendency for some designers, because it feels good, it feeds the ego, to just create something beautiful and maybe dismiss the fact that, okay, maybe it's not as sustainable as it should be, maybe it's not as low cost as it should be, maybe it doesn't work quite as well as it should. However, oh my God, I'm so seduced by this thing. Look at it, it's cool, it's sexy. In some markets, if you're talking about a product that maybe is very subjective, a vase, many things that are sitting around here, interior adornments, etc., that's fine. And it's all about the emotionality of the experience. It's okay to appeal to one's emotion. But there are a lot of other products in our world, and I would say probably most of them, especially like medical products, scientific goods, products that must be safe, automobiles, bicycles, etc. The functionality has to be there, first and foremost. I will often tell my design team, hang on, you'll get a chance to make it beautiful. We've got problems to solve first. Let's do that first. And lay these truths down. Find out what is it that really will make this product a success. How can we catapult this company or this brand to a place it really wants to be? And that means you often need to, I call them truths. It's finding something within that product that hasn't been discovered yet. It might be the way that someone interacts with a product. It might be what they feel about the brand. It might be manifesting unrealized technology. It might be giving technology a voice, or framing a particular problem and presenting it to the end user where they think, oh, okay, this is a new proposition, and there's value in this proposition to me. And beauty then acts as sort of the lubricant to bring all of these parts together, and the communicating value to make sure that people understand, hey, there is value in the functionality and the usability. Because look, it is beautiful. You want to touch it. It's pulling you in. It engages you. And therefore, it's communicating to you about what its functionality is. And that, kind of in a nutshell, is, I think, what good design is. And I have a favorite quote, too.
Yeah, please.
If the wind doesn't blow, the grass doesn't stir. That is a Chinese proverb. To me, it's a definition of innovation. And it's up to the designers and the engineers to both really embody that kind of feeling where it's like, you've got to push, man. Your client is always telling you too much, too long, beyond their imagination. But you have to keep strong, keep pushing. You can be nice about it. You don't have to be pushy about it. But be strong. And I find that just being really honest, like expose your enthusiasm about your craft, being really passionate about it. And as long as you're coming from an authentic, a very real place, your client follows every single time. They follow. And then you take it, but you better have the content. You better have it. If you don't have the content, don't be sticking your neck out there.
Yeah. And Steve, would you agree with this? I think the truth analogy is great, and that's the MVP I think that you guys talk a lot about, right? You need to get to that truth to see if the grass actually does, blow, right? Is that, you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I think one thought I had while thinking about this is that design is present in everything, whether you want it or not. And if you're doing something at any level, or whether it's something quick and dirty and loose, you can incorporate design in terms of form or basic elegance of the solution, aesthetics, and so forth. I think so I view it as very much present in everything, whether you want it to be there or not. I think one thing I'll point out to engineering teams specifically, one pitfall that we've seen is how good is good enough? So a lot of times there's the idea of having Apple quality in terms of fit and finish, materials, and so forth. And sure, we would all like that in terms of the user experience of our products, but we've seen engineering teams really fight some really deep battles and take a product from 95% great in terms of design to 99%, when that's really, they had to sacrifice
It takes
other
just
things
as
to
long
do
to
that.
go from 95 to 99. And,
Right.
and that's where you guys talk about the tooling costs. yeah, it might cost the same to tool it, but the time to get to market, the effort and energy it takes to do that last 5% is tremendous. And so that's where I would argue that, like, you know, where's the rub in it? You know, at what point do we need to stop saying we are solving the user's intent here versus making something just beautiful to make it appealing, right? I can throw up a beautiful graphic on my homepage of what my beautiful product is, but the time it takes to do that last 5% is really challenging. And I think that at the heart for me is design versus engineering, right? How much time is engineering going to spend to do that last 5% to get there? You know, so I'd push it to Darren a little bit. Do you agree in that 5%, or you think you need to get it to 95?
Pillars of design. I mean, it depends what's most important. However, I will say, in the last 5 years, I've seen tooling strategies and the prices and lead times come down dramatically. Like it's just, I would not have believed you if you told me 5 years ago what we're getting now.
Just give me 5 more years, by the way.
No doubt. Apple's paved the way. That's one company. Samsung's paved the way. Yep. There are a lot of suppliers domestically and overseas, but it's not an infinite number of suppliers. And eventually you will run into a supplier who knows exactly what you're talking about with some PVD finish of some media of bead blast on a perfect curvature continuous surface. And they start talking in the language that you're talking in, and we're caught in the middle and we're like, all right, this is great. So tooling and getting to the 95 to 99% is easier. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, like when you think about, does a product need to be beautiful? I would maybe rephrase that as, does a product need to be comfortable? Like, we make a lot of wearables right now, and it shouldn't hurt you, it shouldn't turn blue, it should fit you, and we're all different sizes. It should be comfortable on your wrist, it should be comfortable under your foot, and you should be comfortable having it in your home. It's coming, half of us have it. Soon, maybe more than half of us will have it. And I want it to fit into my life. So it has to be beautiful.
Interesting. So I don't believe in the last 5% thing.
Okay.
Do I need this? You guys, can you hear me okay? I like the echo of the cement. I think every project is very, very different. Some projects are very engineering heavy and focused, and quite frankly, it may be 95% of the effort, and the industrial designer comes in at the last 5% to sort of give a little breath of air to the end user, perhaps, in the solution. I would definitely say that the devil's in the details, and so is God, whatever you believe in. It's hard. This thing that we do is hard. There are easier, I don't know how many of you are industrial designers and mechanical engineers.
That's actually a good poll. How many ID guys do we have here? And MEs or engineers?
A little
So
more.
a
Okay.
little
So it's
heavier on
about
the
this
engineer.
ratio.
Hey, well done.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, every project is different. I mean, sometimes you struggle right to the end, and then all of a sudden you get this fabulous idea, and that last 5% might apply.
Might actually be worth it then. I think that the last question, which I'll just probe you guys with, is that I think what you guys are saying is inevitably there's always going to be conflict, right? There's that between engineering and design, that there's always going to be conflict. And so for you guys as the leading product firms, you know, that are really guiding the light for a lot of us in how we develop products, does one voice speak louder than the other in your organization? Is it project to project, or when you're sitting around and setting product priorities, right? We do this a lot in web design, but when you're sitting around that table, whose voice wins there?
I'll take that on. It all depends on what you design.
Okay.
If it is some cool consumer electronic product that's got to win in the marketplace, you know, like the Google On Hub that we just did, man, Google will say, we don't care what it costs, how hard it is, make it freaking cool.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
We're also simultaneously, at the same time in the office, we have 60 or 70 different projects, and they're all really different. We're also doing a new type of vascular surgery. We're using OCT, which runs down the center of a fiber optic tube, and it paints the inside of an article. So clearly, this is a lot of engineering.
Yep.
And industrial design is acting as support. We're making sure that the doctor, the operators, the clinicians.
They're doing UX, if you will.
It's UX,
Yep.
it's human factors, but clearly we want to emphasize that engineering is the lead there. So it's all over the place. I don't think any of us could really say that one trumps the other as far as priority, unless we're talking about one specific project. You know, like look at the iPhone.
Right.
There's so much engineering innovation in that. Has anyone taken one of those apart? I have, and it was really funny. The first guy that got one, we took another one out. He went to go to the bathroom and we started taking it apart. He came back and he saw this all apart. He thought it was his. And he cried. There was a cry. But the innovation that's in there, it's engineering innovation, make no mistake about it. Yes, it's very beautiful. I love the software, and it's utterly simple. And who doesn't like something like that, which appeals to every emotion that we have? But I really think the achievement is an engineering one.
Interesting. For Apple being such a design-driven organization, that's an interesting statement. Please, Steve.
Yeah, I was just going to key into the it depends theme.
Yeah.
So this is a stylus that we, actually, yeah, if you wouldn't mind holding that there. So this is a stylus that we developed with Adobe. It was released about a year ago. It's project sensitive, cloud enabled, and so forth. Works with the iPad. The sort of the design mission for this was that designers said that the styli that were available in the market just looked crappy. They would be caught dead with them. They're designers. They want something that looks good. And so that was, in that case, a core aspect of the product. And so as a result, we prioritized in 6 weeks, along the lines of testing the most important aspects of the product first, in 6 weeks built a product that looks effectively identical to what the finished product looked like, just to test the aesthetics. In fact, the two important things were the pressure sensitivity, drawing performance, and the aesthetics.
So this was your 6-week prototype?
This was our 6-week
And
prototype.
that's the final one?
Yeah. And that's the final one. It was so important that we bumped that all the way to the beginning of the
Power
process.
budget's a bitch.
Yeah.
Way up high on the priority list. And, in this case, it was very important. In other cases, maybe we wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I think it's cool.
Yeah, it depends. It depends.
We love that answer, right?
Well, but what's great is that we know to ask the question.
Right.
What's the top of your priority list? It can't be product cost, development cost, feature set, and schedule. It can't all be number one.
Yep.
And we know it's going to change.
Yep.
So we will sit down with our client and we will present the 4, and we will present slider bars, sometimes on a whiteboard, oftentimes on a whiteboard, because it's like we're doing it real time. And we'll just ask them, right now, where you sit with the money you have to get to the next round of funding, or if they've got more money than they know what to do with, okay, cost is on the bottom, where are we going? And the more we can check in with them to understand, to get the whole team behind what is the most important 2 things, I think the better we can achieve success.
I think that's pretty cool.
But best of all worlds is when you, and the products that you probably love, think about the products that you personally own, that you really dig. I'm going to guess that most of you say, wow, it's beautifully designed, it's beautifully engineered. I don't know where one stops and the other starts. They support one another perfectly. They're so inextricably linked that it's almost like it has a life of its own. And that's what the great engineers, there are a few prima donna engineers. I mean, Buckminster Fuller was one. He's a great engineer. He was also a designer.
Yeah.
Charles Eames, who most people say was an industrial designer, he was also an engineer. He got all of his great ideas because he went on the floor and started working with his hands, understanding how you bend and laminate wood into these beautiful forms. They're engineering solutions that happen to be absolutely stunningly gorgeous. You can have your cake and eat it too. You can.
Cool. Well, with that, I'd like to just thank the panelists for coming out. So. And I'd like to briefly open up the floor to five quick questions.
Cool.
So that we can have the panelists all talk, and then the rest of the night really is to get with these guys, get a circle, get the conversation going, talk amongst yourselves. So sure, we can start right here. Please speak loudly so we can all hear you.
Hi, I'm Andrew. I work at Indiegogo on the hardware team, so I get to see a lot of these incredible ideas as well, and then try to help fund them. So I've seen a big shift in established design firms. A lot of your workers are leaving to join these small startups, and then going out and maybe asking you guys for help. Have you seen that trend as well? But then I also see the market shifting where these Fortune 500 companies are also building up these innovation labs and want to push out new products, but at the same time don't have a marketplace to test it, and they're coming to Indiegogo to do that. What has been happening in the past 5 years? It's dramatically changed. What has been the shift right now? You guys focusing more on startups? Is Fortune 500 companies still keeping lights on? How's that dynamic changing with this democratization of manufacturing?
I'd be happy to answer that. Well, let's see. I've seen a lot of trends in my profession. So right now there is indeed a trend. There is a certain buzz about startups, and everybody that's 25 years old thinks that they can join a startup company and get all the stock and walk away when they're 30 and retire.
Yes.
The reality is that's not the case. A few, maybe, I don't know what the number is, less than 1%, I would
Less
say.
than 1%.
That actually might happen.
Yeah.
So it's a very trendy idea. The Fortune 500 companies have caught on to the fact that design is at least as important, if not more so, than marketing and sales. So it's been elevated to the position where a lot of these companies now have a chief design officer. And that's fantastic. But with that comes the desire of a big design team. And yes, we get people snagged away by companies like Apple because we're nearby. And that happens. And that means you just have to be a better employer. You know, you have to keep up with what's going on. You have to create an environment where people really want to work. You give them tons of creative freedom. You're very honest with them. You put them right in the mix. We even take interns in to meet the CEO of some of our clients. That's how crazy we are.
Why not?
Sometimes that backfires.
We have one more over here, yeah.
Hello, my name is Shauna. Suppose a client comes to you and he has a crazy idea and he wants to test the market first before putting the entire product together. And he wants an MVP. So for creating an MVP, how will be your design approach? Will you create the entire design, or will you just have some features and then create an MVP?
I'll take it. We do this all the time. Talked to one this morning at 9. Someone comes to us, they've got I would say crazy, I think a unique idea, something that we're interested in, something that our team has talent in. Maybe it's a stretch in technology or implementation or form factor, or maybe a little bit of all three, but we have the chops to do it. We like to architect the product to make sure we're on the same page for a couple of weeks. We're going to define, I don't know, chipsets and communication protocols and rough form factor and battery life, because it's probably a connected wireless device.
IoT.
Right. And that's it. We'll just charge them for that. And if that's good, if we're in alignment, then we can race to the first proof of concept. Maybe if it flies, it's the first flying demo, and see what happens.
Cool.
And we definitely frame that with, it's not going to look like the final product. We will give them, at the best, we will give them an image of the final product. We definitely rely on our ID partners for that.
Yep.
But with relative certainty, with some power calculations, we can say, okay, we're going to, because the battery is often the biggest thing, we can give them a picture of the future, but that takes a couple more zeros. We can get this to you very quickly, so you can prove your market.
Yeah, one. Sean, I know you did. Oh,
Actually, I just wanted a quick follow-up to that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of about, I think, prioritization and figuring out what's most important to do first with really limited
Yeah.
resources. We use an exercise I alluded to earlier, which is really trying to capture and reconcile design, business, engineering, and of course the user voice, and surfacing what the most important priorities are. Maybe you want to spend that 6 weeks building something that's aesthetically very good, and maybe it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, I think having priorities before you approach these is really clear. Sean, please.
My name is Sean. I am a mechanical electrical engineer, and I do freelance work similar to what you guys do, sometimes with early clients. And I was wondering if any of you could speak in more detail about the actual methods that you use or processes that your designers and engineers go through to kind of ramp up and then actually start working together?
So I think the question is, how do you start off those engagements a little
Do you have any
bit?
kind of tools or like process that you go through, or like, I don't know, things that you tell your designers and engineers to kind of get them
I
on the
feel,
right foot?
I feel like you were planted in the audience.
I actually have never met Sean before. Sean, nice
Yeah.
to meet you. I probably,
Yeah, so that would take you 30 minutes to answer, so.
Go for it, Steve.
Yeah, so we actually debate this a lot. So there's certain ways that you can share learning that are generally universally helpful, but you don't want to try to define a process that's too formulaic, that you just kind of follow the steps and make sure that it, expect a certain outcome. We've attempted, if you go to mindtribe.com, we've attempted to capture these 8 methods to build the right product faster, and it's sort of a starting point for making sure you're surfacing the most important aspects, and you have you can go look at what they are. There's 8 of them, but we're trying to capture some thinking around how can we help you build the right product faster. And in our definition of success, or helping companies be successful and creating things that people like, is building the right product faster. So
cool. That's
For
really
sure.
great. We'll do one more question. Yeah, right there.
I think this question goes to Dan. This is with regards to the coupling versus decoupling of ID and
Cool.
engineering. So when you decouple, and you're working with a client, so ID is running by themselves, not babysit by engineering. How much of that do you protect from the client? Like, if they're showing ideas that engineering doesn't think is something viable, and the client gets really excited about it, that could be a dangerous cycle. So is that something you protect the client from, or you just show them everything?
That's a good question.
I think it's a great question.
Way to go, Jeff.
You usually don't want to show stupid stuff to your client.
But I thought nothing's impossible.
Nothing's impossible.
But I do like to really engage the client and let them feel a little bit of what we are feeling about their problem. I like to expose things to them, and part of that is the raw discovery that design actually is by nature. And it's okay. I think it's okay to say, look, we learned something from this. We're showing you this because there is something here that we're all excited about. We think there might be some innovation in here. We're not quite sure yet how to solve this. We're not even sure where to go from here. You might even say that. Usually there is a way, though. If you have the right minds in your group and you have an open-minded client, if they fall in love with something, there's usually a way to get, maybe not all the way there, but certainly, this happens all the time. It happened on a big project last week, actually, where it was a moonshot of an idea, and we shared it, and we kind of put it at the end, like, okay, this is the wild one that you're not going to pick, but we want to show you our breadth. Every client loves to see their consultant be out there. They really do. Like, the crazier you are, sometimes they think the more brilliant you are. It's not always the case. It's not always the case. But lo and behold, that's what got them excited. They're like, we're going to make this happen. And we are rallying around it, and we figured it out. It was a few days. And we figured out something that we thought was impossible. I like that kind of dynamic. Design, being a consultant it's a lot about people. It's about the product, the design, the engineering we're talking about tonight, but it's also about people. And communication, creating a narrative that you're all on this platform together. You're all like in a partnership. Again, that whipsaw feeling, is I think what makes this profession really special.
Cool. Well, I'd like to thank again, Darren, Steve, and Dan for coming out. So just real quick, give them another.